Today I'd like to talk to you about my current favourite YouTuber, NakeyJakey. NakeyJakey predominantly creates comedic video essays on video game related topics. Earlier this year, Jakey released a video entitled Disney Channel Original Movies. In this video, Jakey discusses how at a young age, Disney Channel Original Movies understood what he was going through, respected his interests, and taught him valuable life lessons. They did this through a wide variety of genres, with consistent themes and relatable stories. Some even stood out to Jakey for tackling heavy topics such as autism and racism. He believes these films are still quality and he cherishes them to this day. As a child, this was his primary source of entertainment, which catered to him and gave him feelings of anticipation and excitement. However, he states that these feelings are not nostalgic because he feels the same way about YouTube. Jakey absolutely loves YouTube, and to him every channel is like 100 Disney Channel original movies rolled into one. He then compares a bunch of YouTubers to these movies, then states this:
I want to be like a Disney Channel original movie.
Which is funny, because he already is. There's this weird thing that can happen sometimes where you stumble onto somebody's videos and you think, that was an absolute blast. So you watch a couple more, and before you know it, you've binged their entire channel 40 times, you're buying the shirt, donating to the Patreon. Jakey's not the first YouTuber I've had this with, and he won't be the last, but I'm going through this with him right now, and it's easy to see why. When you first land on a NakeyJakey video, you're immediately hit in the face with his editing style. He's green screened himself, he's sat on an exercise ball. That's pretty unique and original. There's a bunch of stuff behind him, and he's clearly put effort into how everything is presented. He's even using video game sound effects to convey emotion because he loves video games. And this is conveyed not only through his topics, but his editing too. However, when you've watched through a significant number of Jakey's videos, you start to feel like you're learning more about him than the topics themselves. Jakey often tells personal anecdotal stories and tries to convey messages or points through his videos. He has videos that do this more than others, but one that is overtly story and message driven is Getting Your Heart Broken. It's not even about video games, it's about a girl he used to like at school. It essentially boils down to there's plenty more fish in the sea, but there's a great message about how to deal with heartbreak and silver linings. I feel like if I'd seen this as a teenager, it probably would have prevented a lot of unnecessary pain. The video portrays a very relatable story. I think everyone's been in a situation where you like someone, they like someone else, and now you're sad. That relatability allows you to buy into these stories and take on board the messages he wants to get across, which in this case was a life lesson. Another video I found extremely relatable for significantly less intimate reasons was illegally downloading music. As a child, I used LimeWire more than the average 13-year-old should. Every time Jakey would make a point about this site, I'd have a vivid memory in my mind of that happening to me. I remember having to replace my laptop twice due to viruses from LimeWire, and I'm pretty sure LimeWire was how I found out Bill Clinton was a real human who existed. This is probably my favourite video by NakeyJakey right now, so if you've never watched him before, I'd recommend starting with this one. Despite Jakey being my favourite YouTuber right now, I'm probably a bigger fan of his music. His most recent release, Not Dead Yet, really turned me onto his music. After listening to this a couple times, I felt like it really reflected me, and I haven't connected to a song this much for probably 5-6 years. Another aspect of NakeyJakey's content that got me so invested into him was his comedy style. The majority of his videos have a pretty refined style of humour, this being a mesh of absurdist and anti-humour. He'll usually do this for himself using a more quirky persona during moments of comedy, as well as being accompanied by a comedic edit sometimes. While making this video, I was lucky enough to discuss with him on Discord some of his comedic influences for his more recent work, which he claimed were his real life friends and YouTube friends. I know all the YouTubers he listed, but I was most familiar with Gus Johnson. I think from Gus we can see similarities in the increased eccentric nature when delivering a joke, but also in the complete ridiculousness of their humour. I do think it's worth watching his earlier work despite it not being quite as complete in terms of comedy. His Games That Should Bang series, for example, is still incredibly entertaining, but they also illustrate his earlier influences much more potently. In his first ever video on GTA 5 and Metal Gear Solid 5, my first impression was, this feels like a video game donkey video. So I wasn't overly surprised when Jakey mentioned in his video what it means to be a hot boy, that Video Game Donkey was his biggest influence alongside Egoraptor. Video Game Donkey bases his humour almost entirely around absurdist humour, and on the rare occasion he's not using absurdist humour, he's using anti-humour. I think this donkey influence is more apparent to me than it would be to others because I had this same binge fest personal investment thing with Video Game Donkey. Donkey makes comedy videos about a variety of video games as well as reviews, but when I first found him he was well known for his League of Legends content. I remember when I first got into League of Legends and I was introduced to Donkey by a friend through All-Star Donkey. This is probably the most quotable video in the world.
He's out of it. Oh my god! Oh my god!
Sometimes I say to the guys that I play games with, and they have no idea what I'm referring to. Downright Darius is a classic. Slam Dunkey is a classic. Final Boss is a classic. Both cutscenes are classics. The Escape videos, Bio Trundle, Diddy Rise, Dubstep Singed, Yasuo Story, and Dunkey has so many other League of Legends based videos which are absolutely fantastic. However, despite all these excellent pieces of entertainment, his most iconic League of Legends video was I'm Done with League of Legends. This was such a hard and painful video to watch, and there were clearly so many people who played League who were as invested in him as I was, because it felt like part of the community died when he released this. It even felt like part of the game died, but the worst part was how relatable this video was. At the time this was released, I was massively into League, and to hear all these issues and problems with the game that you'd been talking to your mates about, it was very understandable why he decided to quit. However, despite it feeling like something actually died that day, that thing that died was definitely not Dunkey, because he's still thriving, he's still making great videos, and I still watch him whenever he uploads a new video. 90% of the videos he makes now are not even on games I'm interested in, but I still watch him because there was a long period where he understood what I was experiencing in gaming. There was a long period where we had the same interests, and his style of humour was consistent. All of this led to me being invested deeply into a creator I related to. Considering how influential Dunkey has been on Jakey, maybe that explains why I was hooked by Jakey's videos so easily. Not only am I hugely into Dunkey, but I also used to watch a lot of Jakey's other main influence during his earlier videos. Egoraptor. There was a time on YouTube where Egoraptor was the most recognisable animator on the platform, and his Sequelitis series is still fondly remembered to this day. Not only was Egoraptor's main channel a huge success, but these days he's probably more well known for his time on Game Grumps. Game Grumps is a Let's Play channel, and although it's still popular with its current lineup of Egoraptor and Danny, Game Grumps was extremely iconic during its first year with JonTron. Game Grumps historically was great at conveying a genuine friendship between its hosts. These days this is something Game Grumps are criticised for, as they are struggling to make this feel authentic. But for the first couple years Danny was present, it really did feel like the two were long-term mates just hanging out. However, what JonTron brought was that absurd humour that people on the internet seem to enjoy. The friendship between John and Egoraptor felt a lot more childlike and silly, and this probably made them more relatable to a younger audience, but also to an older audience who might be nostalgic for this type of relationship. Clearly people were invested in John and Egoraptor. I have never seen so many fan-made animations and songs for one channel, and some of them were really good. Game Grumps is how I discovered JonTron's main channel, who is probably the YouTuber I've been a massive fan of for the longest period of time. Unsurprisingly, he's also the YouTuber I've binged the most. John's content can be very easily split into different eras, and when I first found him he'd just finished the first era. To this day this is my favourite JonTron moment.
What did I see? What am I seeing here? No, what am I? No, is this, am I right now at this moment as Tim Allen from Home Improvement using a lightsaber chainsaw to fight a raptor?
And his final hallway videos are still my personal favourites. I think because I was able to watch through all of JonTron's earlier work at once, I was hooked very quickly, but it also gives me a greater appreciation of how far he's come. I'm actually pleased he's less focused on gaming now, because so am I, and it feels like both of our personal interests have grown together. Now sometimes on my channel I like to talk about YouTubers with a small subscriber count despite being really good. There's always one guy I use as a primary example of why you should care about small YouTubers. When I first found Tuzel, I was blown away by his presentation in the same way I was by NakeyJakey. He also has a fantastic vocal delivery, and the fact he reviews the most random things. This all pulled me in and I was hooked after about 2 minutes of watching him. I watched loads of his videos in a row, and now whenever I see a notification for Tuzel I get that feeling of anticipation and excitement for his videos, because they're so well put together and so entertaining, and if you haven't watched one of his official reviews you need to see it. The last couple of minutes may have felt a little bit off topic.
Shut the fuck up, you cunt!
This is supposed to be a video about NakeyJakey after all. However, all these channels I've discussed have had a significant impact on me in some capacity, and the areas I've focused on when discussing these creators are personal to me. I'm nostalgic for some of these creators, and I remember how these videos affected me and what they represented. The point isn't just to say Jakey's right to compare YouTubers to Disney Channel movies. He is absolutely right, but I think a bigger question can be raised through this point. Where do YouTubers lie on the creative spectrum in terms of value? I think most people would accept that being a YouTuber is a valid job, but would they really consider their work as valuable as a quality musician or an actor in a film? I don't think they would, which is a shame because they should be. Some of these people have entertained me for nearly a decade. Some of them create a style of content you would not see in any other media, and some have taught me more about life than I should really admit. Today's video is sponsored by Jack Alpha System. Jack makes extremely funny YouTube videos such as his most recent one, Safe Space Food Review, which is one of my personal favourites. He's crazy, he's creative, and he's the first person to ever donate to my Patreon. Thank you so much, Jack. I'd also like to thank Demon Dank for donating too, and the people who bought the brand new shirt. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and let me know what you thought in the comments, and I'll see you next time.
That's fucking sick.